like us. To help us explore that, I am thrilled to kick off today's sessions with Jason Warner, co-founder and CEO of Poolside. Jason, welcome. So Jason, let's start with some definitions. There's no universal definition for AGI necessarily. What is your definition?
So first, I hate the word, I hate the acronym, I hate everything having to do with it.
Excellent, you hate all of it.
Because
I love that.
So ambiguous. It's a placeholder that can be used for absolutely everything and nothing. And obviously, I think, interestingly, OpenAI is going to find itself in a situation where it has to define AGI here pretty quickly with its relationship to Microsoft. So maybe they can do it for us. My definition and how we at Poolside think about this is when an AI can basically do the equivalent information work for a person. And it doesn't mean replace, it doesn't mean any of those sorts of things. It just means in some set of tasks in a domain, can the artificial intelligence, and this is broadly speaking, the systems, the LLM itself plus some systems, do those tasks. And because we're focused on software, I believe it's also a much easier definition to define because we can talk about all the discrete things that are oriented around software development.
I was going to say, what are some of those discrete things, those specific tasks?
Well, so for Poolside, because it's a broad umbrella category that is software development, it is obviously going to be things like code writing, but it also could be things and with having to do with creation. So like creation of docs, creation of unit tests, creation of X, Ys, and Zs, whether they be scripts or deployment mechanisms. Then it's the understanding and interpretation of things. So the understanding and interpretation of requirements and how they translate from requirements into XYZ, docs, code, deployment scripts. So you can just think of it that way. And again, this is kind of a very specific domain that we're applying artificial intelligence to. But because it's more well understood, it allows us to be able to define it pretty specifically in that way. So again, no hard and fast definition, just in a sort of vibey sort of way. When can I replace the equivalent human fingers on keyboard with an artificial intelligence?
So the definition is vibes.
Well, I hate to say it's going to be vibes, but it really is going to be about, I feel comfortable enough with this that I can let it loose in these sorts of domains. Now, on the flip side, it's never going to be about vibes, and it should never be about vibes, because one of the things that software allows us the ability to test those vibes, because we could run the code, we could run the software through the software development lifecycle, and because all those come together, we have safety nets. The safety nets are vitally and critically important, which is also why I think that one of the underlying theses with Poolside is Poolside will hit what we loosely call human level intelligence first in the domain of software. And it's the domain of software that we're going to see all of these things land in first before they actually translate to other domains.
Now, before I ask you this question, I would like to ask all of you, whatever definition you subscribe to, or if it's just a vibe, how close do you think we are to artificial general intelligence? Do you think we'll be there in 5 years? Raise your hand.
Think we'll ever get there? Anyone who's never...
I was going to say, does anyone think we'll never get there? Raise your hand. Okay, who thinks 10 years? That seems to have the most consensus. Does that surprise you?
Well, so we have to start asking the question, what's definition are you using to define the time
I was going to say, like, does someone want to come up? And
actually, we could go to the never. The never is the interesting one to start, and then we could broadly consensus at the 10 and 5. I saw you do never.
Yeah. Well, it's the sort of thing that it's squishy, right? I mean, for you, in your definition, how close are we to AGI?
In the definition I just gave out, which is, broadly speaking, human level intelligence for the average information work for software development, I believe we're about 3 years away.
Okay. What makes you come to 3 years? Because 3 years is a specific number.
So the way that you can think about this is that each generation of artificial intelligence has to basically go through stair steps. And what I mean by that is that as the models become more capable and the systems that we surround the models with become more sophisticated and mature, we start to see that entire things can get knocked down pretty quickly. So one of the things I think that all of us as humans are bad at doing is inferring and kind of extrapolating out the exponential when you're living in it. And I do think that we're living in an exponential, But what we're trying to do is we're trying to extrapolate what we see on the screen at the moment or see it happening in the system out to what that will look like. I don't believe this generation is AGI. I don't believe we're even close to it in this generation. But if you think about how each stair step works and what we're talking about from that order of magnitude increase, that next generation plus some of those systems is going to get us incredibly close. And for software, I think it's so close that you might actually say close enough for right now. And then the next one after that for software, it's over. The artificial intelligence systems will be able to do 80 to 90% of everything that we do as humans. But it doesn't mean they're going to replace humans. I don't believe that's the
I was saying, because that's the
answer to
next logical question, right?
It's just going to be, it's capable of doing what those humans were doing so that we can move on to different types of tasks.
What makes software such a good test bed? It sounds like part of it is because you can test the vibes very directly, but you've chosen software very specifically from the beginning.
Well, two things. So let's talk about it from the crass commercialization standpoint. Software underwrites all of society. If you want to pick a singular domain that underwrites the world, it's software at this point. And some industries are 100% underwritten by it. Some of them are just run by software behind the scenes, and we just don't think of it that way. But software, from a crash commercialization perspective, is effectively an unlimited TAM in the modern world. But software has something else from a technical perspective that we take massive advantage of. Because software is testable, software is discrete, software is introspectable, software is runnable, compilable. So software has a set of properties which we say is largely allowing us to deterministically prove if the result from the artificial intelligence system is good, bad, true, not true, fast, slow, all of those sorts of things. So imagine, if you will, the idea of you're asking any AI system, write me a poem in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, but I want it to be a love letter to my wife. So
that's
weird.
That's an interesting,
it's a thing that we've got
intersection.
going on. She really loves Poe, and she wants it to be a love letter. But imagine you're able to do that. You can do that with those systems because they're mimicking a whole bunch of different things at once. That's what they're doing. They're mimicking a whole bunch of things at once. But to say whether that output of that was going to be good or not, how do you do that with another LLM or another system to determine that? Well, you can't really. You use a human to say whether that's good or bad. And this is what's called RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. And it's one of the big breakthroughs that OpenAI did. OpenAI really got GPT-2 to GPT-3 to 4 better and better and better by employing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people across the world to do that. Software is closer to a deterministic system where you can do the same thing, produce X, Y, Z, and then you could test in another computer, in a simulator, the output. And you could do this not just once, not just twice, you can do this hundreds of thousands, millions of times. And so that's what we've effectively done. We've created a learning environment via all the open source projects on the internet that allow us to say, for all of these millions of projects on the internet, we've identified tens of millions and soon scaling to billions of candidate tasks, produce an output. We will judge you, Poolside, in this case, Poolside is doing the work, and we're judging Poolside on whether you're correct or incorrect, and whether or not your correctness is actually good or not, and then we use that as feedback data. So very specifically how this looks, which makes it very interesting, is imagine I say to Poolside, I need you to go read this file off of disk and do something from it. And I say, I want you to give me that solution. I want you to do that for me 50 times, exploring all possible different ways you can think of to go do that. I then grade all 50 of those.
What does it mean to grade it?
So does it run?
Yeah.
Does it not run? Is it efficient? Is it inefficient? Is it fast? Is it slow? Does it achieve the outcome that we ask it to go do? How close does it achieve that outcome? All of those things are available to us to go do in software. And that scales because it's just another task, another task, another task, another task. You can keep building this. You can keep building this learning environment to the point where it is effectively solving very complex tasks, going from small to large as you build this up.
Now, I'm going to come to you all for questions shortly, but let's say we do reach Poolside's definition of AGI in 3 years. What does the world look like?
Well, so I think that what we have in front of us is the very real notion that these systems are available to us to go do work we ask them to go do. And where we ask them to go do that work is obviously going to be very dependent upon the industry you're in, the company you are, your strategic notion of how you want to build the rest of your business. But when I think about what's going to be available to us, I look at it this way, which is a human's going to be sitting right next to a system. For every one human, there's going to be available effectively almost infinity digital versions of them that they can go and run and do tasks. And very likely they're going to be the boring tasks, the hard tasks, the long.
Like, what's an example of a boring task?
Well, I mean, just say you have an old legacy code base that has no documentation whatsoever. So you can literally just loop this saying, go document this entire thing for me. Or I want to refactor this big portion of the code base. Please go refactor it for me. Make sure all the tests run. Make sure it continues to run in production the same sort of way. Those are the types of things that are going to be available to us.
You've referenced this, but I want to ask it directly. What will be the implications for labor, human labor?
So obviously, whenever you're talking about technology like this, you must talk about human replacement with these things. And I think when you say something is capable of doing the mean information work task of somebody, there are many people who are going to look at that saying, oh, yes, I cannot wait to replace some portion of my employee base with this. But I think that that's going to obviously be a strategic decision for every business on the planet, because effectively you want to bifurcate the world. When this is available, every company is going to have a choice. I have 10,000 engineers inside my organization at the current moment, and I can make them feel like 50,000 engineers because these systems are that capable. So therefore, I can grow. I can go after new markets. I can go do things that have always been on the back burner. I can do the backlog that we couldn't get to. Some other business is going to look at that and say, well, I have 10,000, but I really only need 2,500 to feel this way, or 2,000 people to feel like my current staff. Therefore, that's the decision I'm going to make. Now, I can have opinion on which one of those is good or bad, but I think we cannot not talk about the fact that both of those are going to be there. But the way I look at this is, I was
going to say, what is your opinion on
my first one? The first example I gave is the one where I think most people would, and if I could recommend, should be, because it's all about gain at that point. It's all about what more can we do for our customers, what more can we do inside our own organization, how much better can we make X? And this is the thing that bugs me about the system that we have at the moment. I don't mean artificial intelligence systems. I mean our viewpoint on AI is going to replace people. Is we've always talked about the fact that everything's a limitation on how many smart people on the planet that we have to go do something. And we all know that some portions of software are just bad. Some parts of the modern infrastructure that we have is as poor because of these systems and the way that they've been built, or how we can never get to the P2s. We can only do P0s and P1s. We can never get to the nice to haves. But now we can, and we could unleash these things on those nice to haves. And why wouldn't we take advantage of that, and everybody's lives get better pretty quickly?
Questions for Jason? Yes. Mike is coming your way. Would love to hear your name and company.
Thank you very much. Martha Beath from Fitch Group. I'm curious, just a slightly different point on labor force. So when it comes to people who are just entering the labor force and learning how some of these systems work, and more importantly, how to check that an AI has done something correctly, what's your view about how to train that labor force at the beginning when we're implementing some of these solutions?
So interestingly, I think that let's just take the extreme ends of these spectrums here. So brand new person coming into business, maybe just as like non-programmer trying to become a programmer, or non-industry dev trying to become an industry dev, and then long-time senior person. Each person could use the same system in a very different way. And interestingly, I think that these systems are the perfect learning environment for folks earlier in their career, because effectively you have an infinitely patient senior person to them, next to them. So you say, point it at a code base. Just start, what is this thing even all about? Where should I start looking for the interesting bits and bobs? Explain this to me. I love the one where you can ask it, why would they have done it this way, and what trade-offs might they have made doing this? So you think about treating it, again, like it's a senior person sitting next to you. So those are all going to be available. And again, going into the software side of this, it's, let's say for the last 40 years, you've been building out a system, and some of those systems are quite robust. There's a lot of test coverage on them. There's a lot of good hygiene across the entire software project. They can take advantage of that to run really fast. They can take advantage of, like, hey, I really want to experiment with this concept here. Help me understand what that would look like. Is this safe to experiment with in this spot? What's the unit test coverage look like? What's the integration test coverage look like? All that sort of stuff. It's really going to be helpful to them in that way. And again, software, it's discrete, it's compilable. We can test these things. And so with that, software is actually one of the best environments for this to happen, because the safety net that these systems are going to provide for these folks is going to be unlike other domains where you have none of that discrete, discernible feedback from the safety net.
Any other questions? I have more. Go ahead, please.
I am Barney Everson from Weber Shandwick. You mentioned that AGI and some of these kind of advances are going to hit engineering first, and you mentioned that kind of 3-year horizon on that. And also that kind of leaders of companies are going to have a decision as to whether they kind of supercharge their current engineering functions or essentially reduce headcount as a result. So I guess my question is, if it's going to hit engineering first, how are other parts of the organization going to kind of keep up if they choose that former option of let's make 10,000 engineers feel like 50,000? They're going to be kind of running ahead, and then you've got sales, marketing, HR, legal, other operations that perhaps aren't quite as advanced from a AI-driven standpoint. It'd be great to get your view on that.
Interestingly, I think the other parts of the organization, with the existing people in place, could take advantage of the current systems, because for the most part, they're good enough right now. So if you're just doing all your email replies, your kind of customer service back and forth, you could take advantage of this. It's very easy to use any one of these systems to write, hey, here's my draft of an email reply to my boss of my weekly reports. Can you give me 5 or 6 different versions of this? Make this one a little bit funnier, make this one a little bit more serious, all that sort of stuff. And it could show them some of these things. It can help them with that. The work itself, though, I think what people think about in that 3-year time horizon is, can these systems be autonomous? And the keeping up in the moment is just going to be that they're using them. But when will those other functions trust these systems to be autonomous? Well, I think that's going to be a longer period of time, because they're more at the other end of the reply on one of those things. You're typically another human. And when it's another human to another human, you're probably going to want your fingers on the keyboard a little bit longer, or at least to say, yeah, that's appropriate to send. That's appropriate for the context and the tonal situation of the whatever the event is happening at that moment.
All right, so we are almost at time, but I want us to walk up right to that event horizon.
Okay.
We have reached AGI by your definition. What is one thing that will be true then that is not today? Definitively.
Well,
hard to say anything definitive.
So I think the current moment that we're in from a software perspective is we're using, I think there's 2 things that are happening at the moment right now. So we've got Twitter or X conversations, and you got real world conversations. Twitter and X is all about what you might be calling vibe coding at the moment, which is, can I make a Flappy Birds demo, or can I just do this one shot to an Asteroids game or a CRUD website or whatnot? And people are marveling at the fact that you could go from an idea to something pretty quickly. But there's a lot of things that they don't do and they won't do in a vibe coding-ish sort of way. You don't take security into consideration. You don't take context from the enterprise into consideration. And I think up to this point, we basically said, hey, can I code on vibes? What is going to happen in the next 3 years is people no longer are going to look at AI as an oddity. They're going to look at it as a necessity. And as though we move from vibes to what I call high consequence code environments, high consequence software environments, money movement places, federal defense, hospitals, all of those sorts of things, the world needs to run less on vibes and needs to run more on outputs and discrete, discernible, testable outputs, and pushing those in place. And I think that's actually a notion that's going to come into here. Is the entire AI market's going to have to grow up. All of us AI vendors are going to have to basically stop selling BS bullshit, and we're going to have to sell real discernible outputs. So up to that point, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot more people get a lot more clear about what use cases they can sell, which use cases you should be using this for in the moment.
Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.